American work culture shock. One question quietly follows people who feel exhausted, stuck, or invisible in their own lives. What if the problem isn't that you're weak, but that you're trying to survive in an environment you don't yet understand? In this video, I'm taking you through my real journey of living and working in the United States, where American work culture shocked me, where marriage and loneliness tested me, and where understanding, not talent, not luck, slowly healed everything. Stay with me, because what looks like failure might actually be the beginning of adaptation. The day I first walked into an American office, I thought I was ready. You probably would have thought the same. New country, new opportunity, dream job, exciting future. Movies and social media make it look simple: work hard, smile confidently, and success follows. But American work culture doesn't wait for you to feel comfortable. It moves fast, speaks directly, and expects results yesterday. And if you're slow, confused, or emotional, nobody stops to rescue you. Back then, every morning felt like stepping into a storm without knowing how to swim. Meetings moved quickly, colleagues spoke bluntly, deadlines piled up, and people competed politely but fiercely. Back home, work felt relational. Here, work felt transactional. Productivity ruled everything. Your brain, when facing a new culture, reacts almost like it's under physical threat. Neuroscience explains that unfamiliar environments activate the brain's stress system, releasing cortisol, making you hyper-alert, anxious, and easily overwhelmed. That's why even small misunderstandings felt enormous to me. A manager saying, "We need to talk," sounded like termination. A coworker correcting my work felt like humiliation. But to them, it was normal communication. Meanwhile, outside work, life didn't slow down either. Weather shocked me. One state felt like endless winter, another burned with summer heat. People moved cities for jobs without hesitation. Neighbors smiled politely but rarely became close friends. Independence was admired. Struggle was private. At night, I would sit in my small apartment thinking, maybe I made a mistake coming here. Maybe I'm not built for this place. Maybe going home would be easier. And here's something important for you. That moment, when quitting feels logical, happens to almost everyone who migrates or reinvents themselves. Psychologists call this phase culture shock adjustment, where initial excitement collapses into frustration and homesickness. It's not weakness, it's a predictable psychological cycle. But when you're living it, logic disappears. Emotion takes over. My breaking point came after a brutal work week. Deadlines missed. Feedback misunderstood. I overheard colleagues discussing performance standards, and paranoia convinced me they meant me. Driving home, stuck in traffic, rain hitting the windshield, I felt invisible. Like my efforts didn't count. And at home, my partner, who grew up in the U.S., couldn't fully understand why simple workdays drained me so much. That gap slowly created tension. Cultural differences didn't just exist at work, they followed us into marriage conversations, financial decisions, even weekend plans. You see, American work culture often blends identity with productivity. People ask, "What do you do?" not "How are you?" Achievement becomes self-worth. If your job struggles, your confidence struggles. Science again explains why this hurts. Humans need belonging. When work becomes competitive rather than communal, your brain interprets exclusion as danger. Studies from social psychology show rejection activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. So yes, feeling ignored at work literally hurts. One night, scrolling endlessly on my phone, comparing my life to successful immigrants online. I felt completely stuck. They seemed adapted, happy, thriving. Meanwhile, I was counting dollars before grocery shopping. And that's when the title question of this journey truly hit me: adapt or stay stuck? The truth? Adaptation isn't instant transformation. It's microscopic changes repeated daily. I began observing instead of resisting. Americans valued clarity, so I learned to communicate directly. Meetings rewarded preparation, so I over-prepared. Instead of waiting for instructions, I started proposing solutions. Small shifts, but powerful. I also stopped trying to recreate my old life and started building a new one. Weekend walks instead of isolation. Conversations with coworkers instead of silent lunches. Therapy sessions helped me understand that my exhaustion wasn't failure, it was transition fatigue. At home, honest conversations replaced silent resentment. My partner learned my fears. I learned theirs. Marriage stopped being a cultural battlefield and became teamwork again. And slowly, something surprising happened. Work became less frightening. Feedback felt useful instead of threatening. Opportunities appeared. Confidence didn't explode overnight. It grew quietly, like muscle built from repeated effort. Looking back, American work culture didn't break me. It forced me to grow in ways comfort never would. And if you're watching this feeling stuck in a job, a country, or a life transition, hear this: confusion doesn't mean you chose wrong. It means you're learning something new. Understanding heals. Because sometimes, your nervous system isn't telling you to quit. It's simply asking you to learn new rules of the game. In other words, your brain isn't broken, it's just buffering while your life upgrades. Lost between states and seasons. Landing in America was only the first shock. Living across its different regions became the real test. People often talk about the United States as if it's one unified experience. But the truth feels more like moving between different countries without ever leaving one nation. Each state, each climate, each local culture quietly asks the same question again: can you adapt, or will you stay stuck? My first winter nearly defeated me. Back home, cold weather meant wearing a jacket and drinking hot tea. In the northern U.S., winter felt endless. Darkness arrived before evening. Snow piled up for months. Walking to work became an obstacle course of icy sidewalks and frozen wind cutting through layers of clothing. Small tasks suddenly required effort: starting a car in freezing temperatures, shoveling snow before work, adjusting to silence when people stayed indoors. Science actually explains why climate hits immigrants so hard. Reduced sunlight during long winters lowers serotonin levels, the chemical linked to mood stability. Seasonal affective disorder affects millions, making people tired, unmotivated, and emotionally low without obvious reason. At that time, I didn't know the science, I just thought something was wrong with me. Work felt heavier. Energy disappeared faster. Even conversations felt slower. Then, just as I started adjusting, my job relocated me to a southern state. Suddenly, winter coats disappeared, replaced by intense heat and humidity. Summers felt endless. Air conditioning became survival, not luxury. People spoke slower, friendlier, but professional expectations stayed just as intense. The environment changed, yet the pressure to perform remained constant. And that contrast confused me. In colder regions, people seemed distant but efficient. In warmer states, Conversations were warmer, but workplace competition didn't disappear. Smiles didn't mean less pressure. Cultural adaptation wasn't just weather adaptation, it was learning invisible social rules. Meanwhile, social life worked differently than I expected. Back home, friendships grew naturally through proximity, neighbors became friends, coworkers shared meals regularly, families visited unannounced. In many parts of the U.S., personal space and schedules ruled social interactions. Plans needed advance notice. Spontaneous visits felt intrusive. At first, I mistook independence for emotional distance. Loneliness quietly followed me home after work. My partner, already used to American culture, handled this easily. They had established routines and social networks. I, on the other hand, felt like a permanent visitor watching life through a window. Psychologists explain that immigrants often face what's called social identity disruption. Your previous status, language confidence, and cultural competence disappear overnight. You return mentally to beginner level while everyone around you operates at expert level. That imbalance creates exhaustion you can't fully describe. And this stress leaked into our relationship. Small misunderstandings became arguments. I wanted closeness after long workdays. My partner needed personal downtime. I interpreted independence as emotional distance. They interpreted my need for reassurance as stress overload. Neither of us were wrong. We were simply shaped by different cultural expectations. One evening, after another minor disagreement, I drove aimlessly through unfamiliar suburban streets. Perfect lawns, quiet houses, families inside watching television. Everything looked peaceful. Yet inside, I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. Work stress, climate shock, cultural confusion, and relationship tension blended into one heavy feeling, displacement. What surprised me most was how invisible this struggle was. At work, colleagues saw professionalism. Online, friends saw travel photos and assumed success. Nobody saw late-night anxiety or doubts about staying in America. And here's the turning point most people miss. Adaptation doesn't begin with changing your environment. It begins with understanding your emotional reaction to it. So I started experimenting with small survival strategies. Morning sunlight walks during winter improved mood. Research shows natural light resets circadian rhythms and boosts serotonin. Joining local community events introduced casual friendships without pressure. Cooking familiar food at home rebuilt emotional comfort. Therapy helped me recognize that missing home didn't mean I chose wrong. It meant I was human. Most importantly, my partner and I learned to translate cultural expectations. Instead of assuming intentions, we explained them. Instead of arguing about behavior, we discussed background experiences shaping that behavior. Slowly, loneliness softened. Workdays still felt demanding, but they stopped feeling hostile. Different states felt less foreign and more educational. I realized America isn't one culture, it's many cultures sharing space. And adapting meant learning, not replacing who I was. That realization changed everything. Because sometimes, the hardest part of adapting isn't weather, language, or work pressure. It's forgiving yourself for not adjusting instantly. And once that forgiveness arrives, progress quietly follows. Turns out, feeling lost between seasons and states wasn't failure, it was simply the emotional cost of building a new life. Or to put it simply, your soul just needed time to unpack after the flight. Adapt or be left behind. Stepping into the rhythm of an American workplace feels a bit like jumping onto a moving treadmill set faster than expected. everyone around you seems to know the pace already. Conversations move quickly, emails arrive non-stop, and decisions happen in minutes, not days. In American work culture, speed and clarity aren't optional, they're survival skills. And during my early months, I kept stumbling while everyone else kept running. The biggest surprise wasn't the workload. It was communication. Back home, professional conversations were often indirect. People softened criticism, avoided confrontation, and preserved harmony even when problems existed. In the U.S., communication often sounded blunt, efficient, and emotionally neutral. A manager might say, "This needs improvement," without hesitation. A coworker might openly challenge your idea in a meeting. At first, each correction felt personal. My brain interpreted direct feedback as rejection. Social neuroscience explains why human brains evolved to see social disapproval as a threat to survival. Thousands of years ago, exclusion from the tribe meant danger. Today, your nervous system still reacts the same way, even during office meetings. So when my proposal was questioned in front of colleagues, my heart raced, palms sweated, and thoughts froze. Meanwhile, everyone else calmly moved forward, treating disagreement as normal problem solving. After meetings, I replayed conversations endlessly. Why did they say that? Did I sound stupid? Am I failing here? And here's the brutal truth about American work environments. Nobody has time to fix your confidence for you. People expect professionalism, self-direction, and resilience. At one point, I felt like quitting every Friday. Pressure didn't end at work either. Performance reviews, productivity metrics, and constant comparisons made me question my worth. American workplaces often celebrate individual achievement. Promotions, bonuses, and recognition usually go to those who advocate for themselves. And that was another shock. I grew up believing hard work should speak for itself. In the U.S., hard work matters, but visibility matters too. If you don't communicate your contributions, they can disappear unnoticed. Psychology research shows something called the spotlight effect. We think people notice our efforts more than they actually do. Reality? Most coworkers are focused on their own deadlines. That realization stung. Meanwhile, my personal life absorbed the overflow stress. I came home mentally exhausted, replaying mistakes, worrying about job security. My partner tried to reassure me, but cultural differences created misunderstandings. They saw feedback as opportunity, I saw it as failure. Conversations sometimes turned tense because our emotional interpretations differed. One evening, after a particularly harsh day at work, I sat silently during dinner. My partner finally asked, "Why do you take everything so personally?" That question hurt, but it also woke me up. Because deep down, I knew the answer. I wasn't failing, I was translating cultures incorrectly. So instead of resisting, I started observing. Coworkers who received criticism didn't panic. They asked questions. They clarified expectations. They improved and moved on. Managers respected employees who admitted mistakes but proposed solutions. Gradually, I tested new behaviors. When feedback arrived, I responded with curiosity instead of defense. I asked, what would success look like here? I prepared talking points before meetings. I learned to summarize ideas clearly instead of explaining endlessly. And something unexpected happened. Confidence didn't magically appear, but fear slowly faded. Colleagues responded positively. Managers noticed improvement. Discussions felt collaborative instead of threatening. Science supports this shift. Behavioral psychology shows repeated exposure to feared situations reduces emotional reaction over time. By facing uncomfortable conversations instead of avoiding them, my brain learned they weren't dangerous. At home, things improved too. My partner and I developed better communication. Instead of bringing workplace stress into arguments, I learned to separate professional challenges from personal relationships. We started celebrating small wins, positive feedback, completed projects, even surviving tough weeks. Marriage stopped feeling like another pressure point and started becoming recovery space again. The turning point came during a performance review months later. My manager said, "You've adapted well. Your communication improved, and your confidence shows." That sentence stayed with me. Because adaptation isn't about changing who you are. It's about learning new tools for a new environment. American work culture didn't become easier. I simply learned how to operate within it. And if you're watching this while feeling stuck at work, feeling slower than everyone else, questioning your abilities, understand this. You're not behind. You're adjusting. Growth often looks like discomfort before it looks like success. Because in fast-moving environments, standing still feels safe, but movement is what actually saves you. In simple terms, your career doesn't collapse because you struggle, it collapses when you refuse to learn. And sometimes, the difference between staying stuck and moving forward is just one brave conversation. Or as I eventually realized, the workplace wasn't attacking me, my comfort zone was simply expiring. When I almost gave up. There's a moment many immigrants and dream chasers never talk about publicly, the quiet point where motivation collapses. And going home feels smarter than staying. On social media, everyone looks successful in America. Promotions, smiling couples, road trips, perfect apartments. But behind closed doors, many of us sit on the edge of the bed late at night wondering if we made a mistake coming here at all. For me, that moment arrived during my second year working in the U.S. Work pressure didn't slow down. Expectations kept rising. Bills felt heavier than paychecks. Healthcare insurance confused me. Rent increased. Student loans waited patiently in the background. And unlike back home, survival here seemed to demand constant productivity. There was no pause button. One week in particular broke me. 3 deadlines collided. A project I worked on for months got restructured, making much of my effort useless. Feedback from leadership felt colder than usual. At the same time, my partner and I argued about finances, nothing dramatic. Just the kind of real-life stress couples face when both are tired and scared about the future. And suddenly, everything felt like too much. I remember driving home late one night, highway lights stretching endlessly ahead, radio playing quietly, exhaustion pressing behind my eyes. My mind whispered dangerous thoughts, maybe this dream isn't worth it. Maybe I'm not built for this country. Maybe going back home would mean peace again. Psychology calls this burnout, a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion caused by prolonged stress. According to research from the American Psychological Association, chronic workplace stress reduces motivation, weakens concentration, and even affects immune health. Burnout doesn't feel dramatic. It feels empty. And emptiness is harder to fight than pain. At home, my partner tried to help, but cultural differences complicated things. In American culture, struggle is often framed as temporary, push through, stay positive, keep going. But inside, I felt like I was drowning slowly, not temporarily struggling. Small arguments started more easily. Who forgot groceries? Why are expenses higher this month? Why do you seem distant? None of these questions were the real issue. Fear was. Fear that maybe we weren't succeeding fast enough. Fear that sacrifices were pointless. Fear that everyone else figured life out except us. One weekend, after another tense conversation, I walked alone through a nearby park. Families laughed. Dogs ran freely. Kids learned to ride bicycles while parents encouraged them patiently. Everything looked stable. Normal. And I felt completely disconnected from that image. I sat on a bench and opened my banking app, calculating expenses again. Numbers didn't lie. Living in America cost more than expected. Saving felt slow. Career progress felt uncertain. And then came the dangerous thought, quitting solves everything. But here's what science says about moments like that. Neuroscientists explain that when stress overwhelms the brain, the amygdala, the emotional alarm system, takes control, while the rational thinking center becomes less active. Decisions made during emotional overload often prioritize immediate relief over long-term benefit. In simple terms, your brain just wants pain to stop. Going home would have stopped the stress immediately. No more pressure. No more cultural confusion. No more professional insecurity. But another voice appeared quietly. What if this struggle is temporary? So instead of booking a ticket home, I did something small but important. I talked honestly with my partner, not about money or chores, but about fear. Real fear. The kind people hide because they don't want to look weak. And something shifted. Instead of arguing, we listened. They admitted feeling pressure too. They worried about career stability and future plans just as much. We weren't failing individually, we were struggling together. That conversation became our reset button. We created practical solutions. Budget tracking instead of financial guessing. Weekend time without work talk. Career coaching sessions for me. Therapy, eventually, to unpack stress instead of carrying it alone. Work didn't suddenly become easy. Bills didn't disappear. But mentally, the weight felt shared. Research in relationship psychology shows couples who openly communicate stress develop stronger emotional resilience. Support reduces cortisol levels and improves problem-solving ability. In other words, connection literally helps the brain handle pressure better. Months later, looking back, I realized something powerful. The moment I almost quit wasn't proof of failure. It was proof I cared deeply about building a better life. Every meaningful change includes moments where quitting seems logical. But adaptation often happens right after the lowest point, not before it. And if you're watching this while feeling exhausted, thinking about giving up on your job, your dream, or your move abroad, understand this. Feeling stuck doesn't mean you're losing. It means you're in the hardest chapter of growth. Because sometimes, the dream doesn't collapse. It just asks if you're willing to keep going when motivation disappears. Or as I finally understood that night on the quiet highway, wanting to quit didn't mean I was weak, it meant I was human. Learning how heavy transformation can feel. Seeing America differently. Living and working in the United States eventually forced me to confront something unexpected. Understanding American society required more than just learning workplace habits or adapting to climate differences. It meant learning how people here think about freedom, responsibility, politics. and community, and why conversations about these topics often feel intense, personal, and unavoidable. At first, I tried to avoid these discussions completely. Back home, political or social conversations usually stayed within close circles. At work, people rarely brought them into professional spaces. In the U.S., however, political and social topics often appear everywhere, on news screens in restaurants, in rideshare conversations, at family dinners. Even subtly inside workplace discussions about policies, diversity, and employee rights. And as someone new, I felt confused. Why did people argue so passionately about policies? Why did coworkers hold completely different opinions yet still work side by side professionally? Why did neighbors display signs supporting causes or candidates openly? At first, the volume of opinions overwhelmed me. Then something happened that shifted my perspective. One afternoon, during lunch at work, coworkers began discussing remote work policies, healthcare access, and employment laws. Opinions differed strongly. Voices rose slightly, but something surprised me. Once lunch ended, everyone calmly returned to work together, collaborating as if nothing had happened. No resentment. No cold shoulders. That moment confused me more than the argument itself. Later, a colleague explained something simple: disagreement doesn't automatically mean disrespect here. Many Americans grow up learning to debate ideas openly. Personal identity and political beliefs often connect, but professional cooperation still matters. This realization felt like discovering a hidden rulebook. Psychologists describe this through the concept of pluralism tolerance, the ability of diverse opinions to coexist in shared spaces. In multicultural societies, disagreement becomes normal rather than threatening. For newcomers, though, constant exposure to conflicting viewpoints can feel emotionally exhausting. And emotionally, I was already stretched thin. Meanwhile, media exposure made everything feel louder. News cycles moved fast, often highlighting conflict. Social media amplified extreme opinions. From outside, America sometimes looked divided and chaotic. But daily life felt different. In reality, neighbors helped shovel snow together. Coworkers shared birthday cakes. Strangers held doors open. Communities volunteered during natural disasters. The loudness of politics didn't erase ordinary kindness. And that contrast slowly changed how I saw things. At home, these conversations entered my marriage too. My partner and I grew up with different assumptions about government, healthcare systems, and social responsibility. Sometimes discussions turned tense because our experiences shaped our expectations differently. But instead of avoiding those conversations, we learned to ask better questions. Why do you see it that way? What experience shaped your view? Understanding didn't require agreement, it required curiosity. Science supports this approach. Research in social psychology shows that curiosity reduces defensive reactions in discussions. When people feel heard instead of judged, conversations become cooperative rather than confrontational. Once I stopped trying to pick sides and started trying to understand perspectives, anxiety reduced. At work, I learned professional boundaries. Discussions could happen respectfully without turning into personal conflicts. Managers focused on performance and teamwork, not political alignment. Diversity training sessions emphasized inclusion, not uniformity. And personally, exposure to different viewpoints expanded my thinking. Living in the U.S. showed me something powerful. Large, diverse societies function not because everyone agrees, but because people learn to coexist despite disagreement. And that lesson mirrored my own adaptation journey. Just like cultures, climates, and workplaces required adjustment, understanding social differences required emotional flexibility. Meanwhile, my personal stress slowly softened as life stabilized. My partner and I communicated better. Career confidence improved. Financial planning became clearer. What once felt overwhelming began to feel manageable. Looking back, confusion came partly from expecting simplicity in a complex society. America isn't one story. It's millions of stories happening simultaneously. And newcomers often struggle because they search for one correct way to understand everything, when in reality, adaptation means accepting complexity. For viewers watching this who feel confused or discouraged by social differences while living abroad, here's the truth: confusion is part of learning. Exposure to new perspectives expands understanding, even when uncomfortable. And often, healing begins not when conflicts disappear, but when understanding grows. Because sometimes, growth isn't about choosing a side. It's about learning how different sides can exist, and still build lives together. In other words, the culture didn't become quieter, my mind simply learned how to listen without feeling threatened. And that change made America feel less foreign, and more human. Love across cultural differences. Somewhere between deadlines, culture shock, and financial stress, love entered my life in a way I didn't expect. And honestly, I thought adapting to American work culture was hard, until I tried building a relationship shaped by two completely different cultural backgrounds. Under the pressure of life in the United States, meeting my partner felt easy at first. We met through mutual friends, laughing over shared immigrant experiences and confusing American customs. Conversations flowed naturally. We both worked hard, dreamed big, and wanted stability. At that stage, cultural differences seemed charming, even exciting. Different foods, different childhood stories, different ways of celebrating holidays, it all felt like discovery. But relationships don't stay in the honeymoon phase forever. Real life eventually shows up, and when it did, differences stopped being cute and started becoming complicated. The first conflict surprised me. I came from a culture where emotional closeness meant frequent communication, checking in often, spending as much free time together as possible. My partner, raised in the U.S., valued independence strongly. Personal time wasn't rejection, it was normal. So when they wanted space after long workdays, my brain translated it as distance. Psychologists explain this through attachment styles, shaped by childhood environments and cultural expectations. Some people associate closeness with security, others associate independence with security. Neither is wrong, but misunderstanding creates friction. And friction arrived quietly. After stressful days at work, I wanted emotional reassurance. My partner, also exhausted, sometimes needed silence instead of conversation. Small misunderstandings piled up. Why are you so quiet tonight? Why do you always assume something is wrong? Arguments didn't explode dramatically. Instead, they simmered slowly, draining energy. And when you're already adjusting to American work culture, financial pressure, and immigrant loneliness, relationship tension feels heavier. At one point, I wondered if cultural differences made long-term success impossible. Then something interesting happened. During a couples workshop recommended by a friend, a therapist explained something simple. Cultural differences don't break relationships, unspoken expectations do. That idea hit hard. We realized we weren't actually fighting each other. We were defending habits learned from different worlds. My partner wasn't emotionally distant, they were emotionally regulated differently. I wasn't needy, I simply expressed care differently. Science supports this shift in perspective. Relationship studies from the Gottman Institute show that successful couples don't avoid conflict. They learn how to navigate differences respectfully. Understanding intentions matters more than eliminating disagreements. So we started translating our behaviors. Instead of assuming rejection, I asked directly when I needed connection. Instead of withdrawing silently, my partner explained when they needed personal recharge time. Communication became clearer, less emotional, more practical. And gradually, something healed. Work stress still existed. Bills still arrived. Cultural adjustments continued. But emotionally, we felt like teammates instead of opponents. Love also helped me see America differently. Through my partner's family, I experienced holidays, traditions, and everyday routines that once felt foreign. Thanksgiving dinners full of laughter. Road trips across states. Backyard barbecues where conversations lasted for hours. I realized American culture wasn't cold, it simply expressed warmth differently. Meanwhile, my partner learned parts of my culture too. Food from my childhood appeared in our kitchen. Stories from my home country became part of our shared memories. Slowly, our relationship stopped being a collision of differences and became a blend of experiences. There were still difficult days. Financial stress sometimes resurfaced. Work pressure occasionally caused irritability. But we developed tools to recover faster, honest conversations, humor, patience. Research in emotional resilience shows couples who view challenges as shared problems rather than personal attacks build stronger long-term bonds. Instead of asking, "Why are you doing this to me?" successful partners ask, "How do we solve this together?" And that mindset changed everything. Looking back now, I understand something important. Adapting to American work culture taught me professional survival. But adapting in love taught me emotional survival. Both required humility. Both required curiosity. And both required accepting that growth often feels uncomfortable before it feels rewarding. For anyone watching this while struggling in cross-cultural relationships or navigating love far from home, hear this. Misunderstanding doesn't mean incompatibility. It means learning is still happening. Because sometimes, love doesn't fail due to differences. It fails when people stop trying to understand those differences. And once understanding grows, healing follows naturally. Or, as I eventually realized, adapting to a new country becomes easier when someone is willing to build a home with you inside it. Marriage tested our dream. Marriage sounds romantic in movies, especially when the story involves two people building a life in America together. New country, shared dreams, supporting each other through challenges. But reality rarely looks cinematic. Real marriage, especially under immigration stress and demanding American work culture, becomes less about romance and more about teamwork under pressure. And teamwork gets tested when survival feels uncertain. After the honeymoon phase of our relationship passed, real-life responsibilities became impossible to ignore. Careers demanded attention. Bills arrived consistently. Immigration paperwork required patience. And professional pressure didn't pause simply because we were tired. In the U.S., life moves quickly, and marriage often has to move just as fast. At work, expectations kept growing. Promotions required extra hours. Career shifts demanded relocation flexibility. Companies rewarded employees willing to prioritize work when necessary. Meanwhile, maintaining emotional connection at home required time and energy we sometimes didn't have left. Stress followed us into small daily interactions. A forgotten chore turned into irritation. Miscommunication became arguments. Long workdays left us emotionally unavailable. And cultural differences again made things harder. In my background, marriage meant constant emotional closeness. Problems were discussed immediately. Family involvement was common. My partner, raised in American culture, believed in solving problems privately, calmly, and sometimes after taking personal space. Neither approach was wrong. But when two systems collide, friction appears. Psychologists describe marriage stress in immigrant couples as acculturative pressure. Partners adapt to a new environment at different speeds. One might integrate into American work culture faster while the other struggles longer. That imbalance creates emotional tension. At one point, our schedules barely overlapped. I worked late hours adjusting to new responsibilities, while my partner handled early morning shifts. Weeks passed where conversations became logistical updates instead of emotional connection. Who pays this bill? Did you call the landlord? What time will you be home? Romance quietly faded into routine survival. One evening, after another long workday, a simple disagreement escalated. Nothing dramatic, just exhaustion speaking through frustration. But later, sitting silently on opposite sides of the room, a painful realization hit me. We were fighting stress, not each other. Yet stress doesn't politely announce itself. It disguises itself as personality differences, communication problems, or lack of effort. And if couples don't recognize the real enemy, they start blaming each other. Science explains why stress damages relationships. Chronic stress increases cortisol levels, making people more reactive and less patient. Emotional regulation becomes harder. Small problems feel larger because the brain remains in survival mode. In survival mode, empathy decreases. That night became our turning point. Instead of arguing further, we talked honestly about fear again, the fear of financial instability, career uncertainty, and building a future far from extended family support. Tears replaced defensiveness. Vulnerability replaced blame. And slowly, we rebuilt teamwork. We started scheduling intentional time together. Not fancy vacations, just walks, shared meals, phones put away. We divided responsibilities more realistically instead of assuming equal energy every day. Career decisions became joint conversations, not individual burdens. Research in relationship psychology shows couples who treat challenges as shared missions develop stronger bonds. Language shifts from you versus me to us versus the problem. Marriage stopped feeling like an additional stress source and became emotional shelter again. Living in America also reshaped our understanding of partnership. We learned to rely on each other in ways we never had before. Without nearby family support, we became each other's safety net. Slowly, trust deepened. Work pressures still existed. Cultural adjustments continued. But emotionally, we felt stronger facing them together. Looking back now, I understand something clearly: marriage doesn't struggle because love disappears. It struggles because life becomes heavy, and couples forget they're carrying weight together. And if you're watching this while navigating marriage challenges abroad, remember something important: conflict doesn't mean failure. It often means growth is happening painfully but productively. Because sometimes, relationships don't break under pressure. They become stronger when partners learn how to carry pressure together. Or as we finally realized after many difficult conversations. Success in a new country wasn't about surviving individually, it was about choosing each other repeatedly, even on exhausting days. In the end, marriage didn't weaken our American dream. It forced us to build it on stronger foundations. Family became our healing place. Somewhere between career pressure, cultural adaptation, and marriage struggles, I discovered something surprising about life in the United States. Success here isn't only about professional achievement. For many immigrants chasing opportunity, survival starts with work, but healing often starts with family. And family doesn't always mean parents or relatives living nearby. Sometimes, family is simply the people who help you breathe again when life feels overwhelming. During our early years in America, both my partner and I were focused on survival. Career growth, visa stability, financial planning, adjusting to American work culture, everything felt urgent. Days blurred into deadlines. Weekends became recovery periods instead of real rest. We were functioning, but not living. Then came a period when work stress reached another peak. Layoff rumors circulated at the company. Economic uncertainty filled headlines. Colleagues worried quietly. Every meeting invitation triggered anxiety. At home, exhaustion showed in small ways. Quick dinners replaced conversations. Phones stayed in our hands even while sitting next to each other. Sleep schedules shifted due to stress. Our apartment felt more like a transit station than a home. One evening, after yet another long workweek, we attended a small gathering hosted by friends, another immigrant couple living nearby. Nothing special was planned. Simple homemade food. Casual conversations. Laughter over shared misunderstandings about American culture. But something unexpected happened. For the first time in weeks, I felt relaxed. Nobody talked about performance reviews or productivity. Instead, conversations revolved around cooking disasters, funny workplace moments, and nostalgic memories from home countries. People shared struggles openly: visa fears, job insecurity, cultural confusion. And suddenly, isolation disappeared. Psychologists call this emotional buffering. Studies show that social connection reduces stress hormones and improves mental resilience. Humans recover faster from stress when they feel supported by community. That night, driving home, I realized something powerful. Career success alone couldn't sustain emotional well-being. Community mattered. After that, we started investing intentionally in building connection. Weekend dinners with friends became regular. Video calls with family back home became priority instead of occasional obligations. Cultural traditions from our childhood found their way into our American apartment: holiday foods, music, celebrations. Our home slowly transformed. Work stress still existed, but recovery improved. Conversations became warmer. Laughter returned more often. Even small routines, cooking together, watching movies, walking around the neighborhood, started feeling meaningful again. Family, whether biological or chosen, became emotional oxygen. American culture often celebrates independence. Young adults move out early. Careers frequently require relocation. People build lives away from hometowns. Independence creates opportunity, but it can also create loneliness if connection isn't actively built. At first, I misunderstood this independence as emotional distance. Later, I realized Americans often build support networks differently, through friendships, community groups, shared interests. And immigrants must learn to build those networks from scratch. At work, too, relationships changed. Instead of seeing coworkers only as competitors, I started seeing them as potential allies. Lunch conversations became opportunities to connect rather than silent breaks. Shared experiences at work built camaraderie. Science explains why belonging matters so much. Social neuroscientists show that feeling socially connected activates brain regions linked to safety and well-being. Isolation, on the other hand, increases anxiety and depression risk. In simple terms, humans aren't designed to survive alone. Marriage also improved as emotional support systems expanded. Instead of expecting my partner to carry all emotional weight, friendships and community shared that load. Pressure inside the relationship decreased. We began hosting friends ourselves. Small gatherings turned our apartment into a welcoming space. Cultural exchange became normal, different foods, languages, traditions mixing naturally. And slowly, America felt less foreign. Not because work became easier or finances magically improved, but because emotional roots started forming. Home wasn't just a physical place, it became people. Looking back, I realized something important for anyone trying to adapt abroad. Professional success without emotional connection feels empty. But modest success with strong relationships feels fulfilling. And if you're watching this while feeling lonely in a new country, understand this: loneliness doesn't mean you don't belong. It simply means connection hasn't formed yet. Healing begins when we stop trying to survive alone. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do in a new country isn't chasing success, it's building family where none existed before. And in the end, we discovered something beautifully simple: adaptation becomes easier when laughter fills the space where stress used to live. Turns out, success feels warmer when someone is waiting at home to share it with you. Culture shock is psychological, not failure. Something shifted in my journey the moment I stopped asking, "Why am I struggling?" and started asking, "What exactly is happening inside my mind?" Because after years of adapting to American work culture, marriage pressures, climate changes, and social differences, one truth became clear. Culture shock isn't a personal failure. It's a psychological process every human experiences when entering unfamiliar environments. And understanding that changed everything. For a long time, I thought my exhaustion meant weakness. I compared myself to immigrants who seemed to adapt faster. Social media showed smiling faces, career wins, happy families living comfortably in the U.S. Meanwhile, I still battled confusion at work, loneliness in social situations, and occasional fear about my future. What I didn't understand then was this: adaptation follows predictable emotional stages. Psychologists describe culture shock in 4 phases. First comes excitement, the honeymoon stage. Everything feels new and interesting. That was my arrival in America. New food, new people, new opportunities. I felt energized. Then comes frustration. Differences become obstacles. Language misunderstandings appear. Workplace communication feels harsh. Weather feels extreme. Social norms feel confusing. This phase hit me hard. Simple tasks became stressful. Work mistakes felt humiliating. Loneliness grew quietly. The third phase is adjustment. Slowly, routines form. Communication improves. Emotional reactions soften. Daily life becomes manageable again. That phase began once I stopped fighting the environment and started learning from it. And finally comes adaptation. Not complete transformation, but comfort. You function normally. Differences still exist, but they no longer feel threatening. Understanding these stages helped me forgive myself. Because when you don't know culture shock is normal, you interpret struggle as personal failure. Your brain tells you everyone else is succeeding except you. Science shows why this happens. The human brain is built for familiarity. Predictable environments conserve mental energy. When everything is new, language, work expectations, social rules, the brain consumes extra energy processing information. Decision fatigue increases. Emotional reactions intensify. In simple terms, living abroad tires your brain more than you realize. At work, this exhaustion appeared as insecurity. Feedback felt harsher. Mistakes felt catastrophic. Promotions seemed unreachable. Meanwhile, American coworkers operated comfortably within familiar systems. Once I understood the psychology, my perspective changed. Instead of thinking, I'm bad at this, I started thinking, my brain is still learning. And learning takes time. Marriage also benefited from this understanding. Many arguments between my partner and me came from emotional exhaustion, not incompatibility. Once we recognized adaptation stress, patience increased. Research in cross-cultural psychology shows couples facing migration stress often experience temporary conflict increases. But couples who understand adaptation processes recover faster because they stop blaming each other. Instead of asking, why are we fighting? We started asking, what stress are we carrying today? That small shift reduced tension dramatically. Workplace stress also became easier to manage. Instead of fearing mistakes, I began treating them as part of learning American professional culture. Communication improved because fear decreased. Confidence grew quietly. Meanwhile, emotional resilience developed through repetition. Each successful conversation, each solved problem, each survived stressful week built mental strength. Neuroscience explains this through neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself through repeated experiences. What feels impossible today becomes normal tomorrow after enough exposure. And this understanding became my healing point. Not because life became easy, but because struggle stopped feeling permanent. For anyone watching who feels stuck in a new country, job, or life transition, understand this. Confusion is not proof you don't belong. It's proof you're adapting. Growth rarely feels comfortable while it's happening. Looking back, I see that the hardest part wasn't American work culture itself. It was misunderstanding my emotional reaction to it. Once understanding arrived, healing followed naturally. And adaptation stopped feeling like surrender. It started feeling like evolution. Because sometimes, your environment isn't rejecting you. Your brain is simply updating its survival software. And just like any update, progress takes time, and occasionally requires restarting before things run smoothly again. Small habits changed everything. Big life changes rarely happen in dramatic movie moments. No music plays. No sudden breakthrough arrives overnight. In reality, transformation often hides inside small, almost invisible habits repeated daily. And my adaptation to American work culture truly began not through massive decisions, but through tiny behavioral changes that slowly reshaped my confidence, productivity, and emotional balance. At first, I searched for big solutions. A better job, a higher salary, a perfect schedule, something that would magically remove stress. But nothing changed. Work pressure continued. Bills stayed real. Cultural adjustments remained necessary. Then a mentor at work said something simple after noticing my constant exhaustion: "Don't try to fix your whole life. Fix your next morning." That sentence stayed with me. Science backs this idea. Behavioral psychology shows that small, repeatable actions create long-term change more effectively than extreme short-term efforts. Habits automate behavior, reducing mental effort and stress. In high-pressure environments like American workplaces, mental energy becomes your most valuable resource. So instead of changing everything, I changed one thing. I started waking up 30 minutes earlier, not to work more, but to prepare mentally. No phone scrolling. No emails. Just coffee, light stretching, and planning the day calmly. That small shift reduced morning chaos. Then came another change. At work, I stopped trying to complete everything perfectly. Instead, I prioritized 3 important tasks daily. Finishing those gave psychological satisfaction. Productivity research shows small wins trigger dopamine release, increasing motivation. Confidence slowly returned. Lunch habits changed too. Instead of eating alone at my desk, I began joining coworkers occasionally. Casual conversations improved relationships. Workplace friendliness increased collaboration, making daily work smoother. None of these changes were dramatic. But together, they reshaped my experience. Meanwhile, stress management at home improved through simple routines. Evening walks with my partner replaced endless phone scrolling. Weekend grocery shopping became shared time instead of a chore. Cooking familiar comfort food reduced emotional homesickness. These tiny rituals built stability. Neuroscience explains why routines help adaptation. Predictable habits reduce stress by giving the brain familiar anchors in unfamiliar environments. When everything else changes, culture, language, job expectations, routine provides psychological safety. Financial habits also evolved. Instead of fearing money conversations, my partner and I began monthly budget check-ins. No blame, just transparency. Financial planning apps helped track expenses. Savings grew slowly but visibly. Financial clarity reduced anxiety dramatically. Work challenges didn't disappear, but resilience improved. I also learned the importance of saying no. In American work culture, ambition often pushes employees to accept every opportunity. But overcommitment leads to burnout. Learning to protect personal time improved mental health. Research shows boundaries prevent chronic stress and improve long-term productivity. Therapy became another small but powerful tool. Talking openly about adaptation struggles helped normalize experiences. Emotional weight lightened once fears were spoken aloud instead of carried silently. Meanwhile, physical health needed attention too. Simple exercise routines, short gym sessions or neighborhood runs, boosted energy. Exercise releases endorphins, reducing anxiety and improving mood. Workdays felt more manageable when physical energy improved. Marriage also benefited from small changes. Weekly date nights didn't need expensive restaurants, sometimes just watching movies at home without distractions rebuilt connection. Consistency mattered more than extravagance. And here's what surprised me most. Progress felt slow day by day, but massive year by year. Looking back, the person who almost quit America years earlier barely resembles who I am now. Not because life became perfect, but because habits built resilience. For viewers struggling with adaptation, career pressure, or life transitions, here's an important truth: waiting for motivation rarely works. Motivation appears after action, not before it. Start tiny. Fix one morning routine. Improve one conversation. Build one healthy habit. Save one small amount monthly. Walk 10 minutes daily. Small actions compound over time. American work culture still demands speed and performance. Challenges still appear. But preparation makes survival easier. Because adaptation doesn't come from heroic efforts. It comes from ordinary actions repeated consistently. And sometimes, the difference between staying stuck and moving forward is simply deciding to improve one small habit today instead of waiting for a perfect tomorrow. Or as I finally learned, success in a new country isn't built in giant leaps, it's built quietly. One small step repeated until it becomes your new normal. Understanding set me free. At some point in this long journey of living and working in the United States, something subtle but powerful changed inside me. Work pressure still existed. Bills still needed paying. Cultural differences hadn't magically disappeared. But emotionally, I stopped feeling trapped. And the reason was surprisingly simple. I finally understood both my environment and myself. Understanding didn't solve every problem. But it removed fear. In the early years, every challenge felt personal. If work feedback was tough, I thought I was failing. If social situations felt awkward, I blamed my personality. If marriage struggles appeared, I questioned compatibility. Everything seemed like proof that I didn't belong here. But after years of adaptation, reflection, and small improvements, a new perspective formed. Life wasn't attacking me. Life was teaching me. And once that realization settled, emotional resistance softened. At work, I began seeing professional challenges differently. American work culture values initiative, speed, and accountability. Early on, these expectations overwhelmed me. Later, I realized they weren't meant to intimidate, they were systems designed to keep companies competitive. Once I understood that, feedback stopped feeling like judgment. It became information. Managers weren't criticizing me personally, they were guiding performance improvements. Psychologists call this cognitive reframing, changing how situations are interpreted emotionally. Research shows people who reframe challenges as learning experiences develop stronger resilience and lower anxiety levels. In practical terms, problems stopped feeling permanent. Marriage benefited from this understanding too. Earlier conflicts with my partner felt like cultural battles. Later, they became communication puzzles we could solve together. Instead of assuming negative intentions, we asked questions. Instead of reacting emotionally, we paused. Relationship experts emphasize emotional intelligence as a core factor in long-term relationship success. Couples who understand emotional triggers, both theirs and their partners, recover from conflict faster. And recovery matters more than avoiding conflict entirely. Meanwhile, life in America began feeling less foreign. I understood workplace humor better. Social customs became familiar. Grocery stores no longer felt confusing. Simple tasks that once drained mental energy became automatic. Neuroscience explains this through neural efficiency. The brain builds shortcuts for repeated experiences, making previously difficult tasks effortless over time. Adaptation isn't visible day to day, but brain pathways literally strengthen through exposure. Confidence grew quietly from this understanding. Financial stress, once overwhelming, also became manageable through planning and realistic expectations. Instead of comparing myself to people who seemed more successful, I focused on steady progress. Comparison, psychologists warn, often destroys motivation. Social comparison triggers feelings of inadequacy even when personal progress exists. Understanding this helped me shift attention back to my own journey. And slowly, motivation returned. Not explosive motivation fueled by excitement, but calm motivation grounded in clarity. For viewers watching who feel stuck in their careers, relationships, or life transitions, here's something important. Feeling stuck often comes from misunderstanding circumstances rather than actual impossibility. Once you understand the system you're navigating, fear reduces. For immigrants or newcomers adapting to American work culture, confusion doesn't mean failure. It means learning is still happening. Every uncomfortable meeting, every misunderstood conversation, every stressful adjustment contributes to growth. Looking back, I see a pattern. The hardest periods in my life weren't caused by difficulty itself, but by misunderstanding difficulty. Once meaning appeared, suffering softened. My partner and I also grew closer through this realization. Shared struggles transformed into shared victories. Instead of surviving separately, we thrived together. And America slowly became home. Not because everything became easy, but because I understood how to live here without constantly fighting reality. Healing didn't come from escaping challenges. It came from understanding them. Because sometimes, freedom doesn't arrive when circumstances change. Freedom arrives when your perspective changes. And the day understanding replaced fear, I realized something profound. I wasn't stuck anymore. I was moving forward all along, just slower than I expected. In the end, adaptation didn't erase who I was. It revealed who I could become. The journey continues as adapt, grow, and keep moving forward. Standing where I am today, after years of living and working in the United States, I finally understand something that once felt impossible to grasp. Adaptation is not about losing yourself. It is about discovering new strength inside yourself. The journey didn't end when things became comfortable. It didn't end when work felt manageable or when marriage found balance again. Real life never truly reaches a finish line. Instead, it becomes a continuous process of learning, adjusting, and choosing growth again and again. And that is the message I want to leave with everyone watching this channel. The early chapters of my American journey were filled with confusion, loneliness, and cultural shock. Professional expectations felt overwhelming. Communication mistakes created stress. Marriage struggled under pressure. Financial worries sometimes kept me awake at night. At that time, I believed success meant reaching a point where problems disappeared. Now I know something different. Success means becoming someone who can handle problems without losing hope. Looking back, each challenge became part of a bigger transformation. Workplace misunderstandings taught me communication skills. Financial struggles taught discipline. Cultural differences taught empathy. Marriage difficulties taught patience and emotional maturity. Growth rarely feels pleasant while it is happening. But later, it becomes strength. For viewers following stories about American work culture, immigrant experiences, or relationship struggles, one truth stands out clearly. Adaptation takes time. No one arrives in a new country and immediately feels confident. No couple navigates cultural differences without tension. No career path develops without mistakes. Yet social media and online success stories often skip the messy parts. This channel exists to show the real journey. The slow progress. The setbacks. The healing. The quiet victories that happen when no one is watching. Because those moments shape real success. My partner and I now laugh about situations that once felt overwhelming. Cultural misunderstandings that caused arguments before now become funny stories we tell friends. Stressful job challenges turned into career milestones we proudly remember. Time didn't erase difficulties. Understanding transformed them. Psychologists studying resilience emphasize an important concept. People grow stronger not by avoiding hardship, but by developing coping skills through hardship. Emotional flexibility, communication, and self-awareness become tools that protect mental health and relationships over time. And adaptation doesn't mean becoming someone else. It means expanding who you already are. Life in America taught me independence, confidence, and openness to different perspectives. But it also deepened my appreciation for my roots, my culture, and the values I brought with me. Instead of choosing between identities, I learned to blend them. That blending created a new version of myself. And this transformation continues every day. Career goals still evolve. Relationships still require effort. New challenges still appear. But fear no longer controls decisions. Experience replaces panic with patience. For anyone watching who feels stuck right now, whether in a job, a marriage, or a new country, remember this. Feeling lost today does not mean you will feel lost forever. Confusion is often the first step toward clarity. And progress sometimes moves so slowly you cannot see it happening. But if you look back at who you were 1 year ago, 2 years ago, or when you first arrived in a new place, the difference becomes clear. Growth hides inside persistence. This channel continues because many people share this journey. Immigrants adjusting to American work culture. Couples balancing love and cultural differences. Professionals chasing opportunity while trying to maintain emotional health. Stories connect us. And if my experiences help even one person feel less alone, then every struggle had purpose. So where does the journey go from here? Forward. With new goals, deeper understanding, and stronger relationships. With lessons learned and new dreams forming. With gratitude for past challenges and hope for future opportunities. And with a reminder that healing doesn't come from perfection. Healing comes from understanding. If this story resonates with you, if you are navigating career pressure, adapting to life in a new country, or working to strengthen your relationships, this channel is for you. Here, we share real experiences about work culture adaptation, marriage growth, emotional resilience, and life transitions in America. Because no one should feel alone while building a new life. Before this video ends, I want to thank everyone who has followed this journey so far. Your support, comments, and shared experiences help create a community where learning and healing become possible together. And if you are new here, consider subscribing and joining future conversations about adapting, growing, and thriving in changing environments. More stories are coming. More lessons, more challenges, more victories. Because life keeps moving, and so do we. The journey that once shocked me has now shaped me. And the most important lesson remains simple. Adapt when you can. Learn when you struggle. Heal when you hurt. And never believe you are stuck forever. Understanding heals. And the journey continues. This journey across American work culture, marriage challenges, and personal transformation didn't just change where I live, it changed who I am. And if there is one message I hope stays with you, it is this. Growth doesn't happen when life becomes easy. Growth happens when we refuse to give up on ourselves. Every struggle shared on this channel comes from real experiences, adapting to a new country, facing career pressure, protecting relationships, and learning how to heal emotionally while chasing opportunity in the United States. And the story doesn't end here. Because new challenges are coming. New lessons are waiting. And future videos will dive even deeper into the realities of building a life abroad, strengthening relationships, navigating U.S. work culture, and finding emotional balance while pursuing success. If today's story connected with you, if you are adapting, healing, or searching for direction in your own life, then you are not alone. This channel is a place where real journeys are shared, mistakes are learned from, and hope keeps moving forward. So before you go, take one simple step with us. Subscribe to the channel. Like this video if it spoke to your journey. And share your story or thoughts in the comments, because someone reading them might need encouragement today. Stay with us for the next chapter, where we'll uncover more truths about working, loving, and growing in America, and what it truly takes to build a life far from home. Because adaptation is only the beginning. And the most powerful stories are still ahead. See you in the next journey.